PR fixers are dead, and Blake Lively is the proof. The old model goes something like this. Something happens. It bleeds online. Everyone starts talking about it, aided by the algorithm, and then you have an online reputation problem. Then the celebrity brings in the fixers, usually lawyers aided by publicists, sometimes your famous husband. Everyone else becomes that person's voice of God. Every move, every statement, every post gets filtered through those people. And the person in the middle of the crisis follows all of it because that's what they're supposed to do. Blake Lively has done exactly that. And I posit there is no one in Blake Lively's corner who's looking out for Blake Lively. And that's why I think she's getting torched. I cannot tell you how many times in my work as a crisis manager that I've had to mop up the mess.
Here's a scenario nobody is talking about. Blake Lively walks into that Manhattan courtroom on May 18th. She testifies. The jury believes her. She wins on retaliation. She wins on breach of contract. The verdict comes back in her favor, and her reputation is still in ruins. That is not a dramatic hypothetical. That is what one of the country's most respected public relations experts is warning about right now, and her argument is so precise and so uncomfortable that it deserves a serious look. Because winning a lawsuit and winning the public are two completely different things. And according to this expert, Blake Lively's team is currently failing at one of them in a way that may be impossible to fix. Welcome to the Marquee Report. Let's get into it. At the voice we are focusing on today is Molly McPherson, a public relations expert who has built her reputation on analyzing exactly these kinds of high-profile image crises. She is not a gossip commentator. She is not a fan account. She studies how public figures manage and mismanage their reputations during moments of maximum scrutiny. And her assessment of how Blake Lively's PR team has handled this situation is genuinely scathing. Let's start with the big claim she made this week, because it is the kind of statement that sounds provocative until you actually think about what it means. Molly McPherson said the dismissal of Blake Lively's claims proves to her that PR fixers are dead, at least in Hollywood. That is a sweeping statement. So let's unpack it properly, because she is making a specific argument, not just a hot take. And that argument has real implications for how we understand what is happening to Blake Lively's public image right now. For most of Hollywood's history, the PR fixer was a powerful and feared figure. These were the people who made problems disappear. They controlled access to their clients. They managed which journalists got interviews and which ones got frozen out. They shaped narratives by feeding stories to friendly outlets. They killed negative coverage before it reached print. They decided what the public knew and when they knew it. That model worked in a world where information moved slowly and gatekeepers controlled the flow. That world no longer exists. Today, information moves in real time. Court documents get posted to Court Listener and are being analyzed by 1 million people within hours. And text messages get unsealed and go viral before any PR team can issue a response. Subreddits with hundreds of thousands of members are dissecting every word of every statement before the ink is dry. YouTube channels exactly like this one, are breaking down the legal filings in detail for audiences who actually want to understand what is happening. You cannot fix that. You cannot manage that the way a traditional Hollywood PR operation manages a story. The tools that worked in 2005 do not work in 2026. And Molly McPherson's point is that Blake Lively's team appears to be using the 2005 playbook in a 2026 world. That is the death of the PR fixer. I'm not the death of public relations as a discipline, but the death of the idea that a small team of well-connected people can control what the public thinks about a high-profile figure in the middle of a major controversy. Here is where Molly gets very specific, and this is the part of her critique that is hardest to argue with. After the April 2nd ruling dismissed 10 of Lively's 13 claims, several responses were posted to Blake's Instagram story. Not a press release, not a statement to a major outlet, not a sit-down interview. Instagram stories, content that disappears after 24 hours.
I saw you at the
Molly
Aaron's with
McPherson
Premiere.
called
It's so
this
good
a
to see you
mistake.
guys.
And when you think about it from a pure communication strategy
In a ruling
standpoint,
issued
she is
Thursday,
right. Instagram stories are designed for your existing followers. And the people who already follow Blake Lively and are already in her corner.
Nice and cold.
Posting
nice
a
and
carefully worded legal statement
however,
there
some of
reaches
Lively's
exactly
claims
the audience
remain,
that
like
does
her
not need to be
accusation that
persuaded.
Baldoni made a comment
They are
about
already
the actress
on her
never
side.
watching porn
The people who
in
are not
front
on
of the
her
film's
side,
crew,
and there are a
among
significant number
others,
of them,
which lay
as
a
anyone who
foundation
has
for her
spent 10 minutes
accusation
online
of
in the last 18
retaliation.
months knows.
It's one of
Do
three
not follow
claims
Blake
that
Lively
moves
on
forward when they
Instagram.
go to trial.
They are not going to
alongside
see
breach
an
of
Instagram
contract
story.
and aiding and
They are going to
abetting
see
in
the coverage of the
retaliation.
Instagram story,
The trial is scheduled
filtered
to
through
begin
outlets
May
and
18th
creators
in
who
New
may
York.
frame it in ways her
ET has
team
reached
cannot
out to
control.
both parties for comment.
Molly put it this way:
Baldoni's attorneys say
Blake's
they're
team is
very
only
pleased
managing
with
her
the
base
latest
rather
ruling.
than the middle.
These were very
That
serious
phrase is the key
allegations,
to
and we are
understanding
grateful to the
everything
court
that is
for its
strategically
careful
wrong
review
with
of
how
the
this
facts,
situation
law,
has
and
been handled.
voluminous evidence
And the
that was
base does not
provided.
need managing.
Are you feeling
The
good
base
about the
is already
case?
there.
Feeling great, thank
The
you.
middle,
And how's your
the
client
people who do
feeling?
not
Is
have a
holding up
strong
okay?
opinion either way,
feeling as
who are
well
still
as he
forming
can
their view of this
under these
situation.
circumstances.
That is the
It's
audience
been
that
a messy
determines long-term
situation since the
reputation.
film came out in
And
2024.
according to Molly,
But Colleen
nobody on
Hoover,
Blake's
who
team
wrote the
appears
book
to be
upon which
speaking
the
to
film
them.
is based, told
Molly
ET last
McPherson
month
made one
she's
statement in
proud
her
of the final
analysis that is the
product.
most damning of all. She said, and this is a direct quote, "There is no one in Blake Lively's corner who is looking out for Blake Lively." She elaborated that nobody on the PR team is looking out into the public and asking how the public is interpreting all of this. That is an extraordinary thing to say about someone who is presumably paying significant money to a professional team whose entire job is to manage exactly that question. But look at the evidence and it becomes harder to dismiss. The press tour behavior that sparked the initial backlash. The product promotion during a domestic violence film's release cycle. The Instagram story responses after a major legal ruling. The framing of statements that land perfectly for legal purposes but create terrible optics in the public conversation. None of these are the decisions of a team that is asking, how is the public interpreting this? They are the decisions of a team that is either focused entirely on the legal strategy or focused on satisfying the existing fan base or simply not equipped for the speed and scale of modern public scrutiny. And the result, as Molly points out, is that Blake Lively has been receiving significant public hate despite being the person who filed claims of wrongdoing. And that is a remarkable outcome. Whatever you believe about the merits of the case, the person making the allegations is the one taking the heaviest reputational damage in the public conversation. To illustrate how bad the public perception problem has gotten, consider what happened in January of this year. Jamila Jamil, actress, activist, someone with a significant public platform, went after Blake Lively in a rant that went viral for all the wrong reasons. The language she used was extreme. She called Lively a suicide bomber. It was a bizarre and widely criticized choice of words. Even people who are not sympathetic to Lively push back on Jamil's framing. But here is the thing. The fact that a public figure felt comfortable enough to use that kind of language about Blake Lively, publicly, and without apparent concern about the blowback, tells you something about the state of her public image. It tells you that attacking Blake Lively has become socially acceptable in certain circles in a way that simply would not have been true before this story exploded. That is not a legal problem. No judge is going to rule on what Jamila Jamil says on the internet. But it is a reputation problem, and it is the kind of reputation problem that outlasts court verdicts. Molly McPherson's point is that the court of public opinion does not wait for legal rulings. It forms its judgments in real time, based on incomplete information, filtered through whoever is telling the story most effectively. And right now, the people telling the Blake Lively story most effectively are not on her side. So let's ask the question directly. Has Blake Lively's reputation been permanently damaged by this situation? The honest answer is, it depends on what happens next. And it depends on whether her team figures out a fundamentally different approach before it is too late. Here is what history tells us. Reputations that survive major public controversies almost always survive because of one thing. The person at the center of the story finds a way to connect authentically with the public beyond the controversy itself. Not through lawyers, not through Instagram stories, not through carefully worded statements that are clearly written by a legal team. Through genuine, human, unscripted moments that remind people who the person actually is. We saw a glimpse of that with the National Geographic documentary, a mother narrating a penguin series for her kids. And that story cut through in a way that 100 legal filings never will. People responded to it because it felt real. More of that, much more of that, is probably what her PR team should be building a strategy around, not managing the base, not posting 24-hour Instagram stories after court rulings, but finding the authentic human moments and letting them breathe. Whether her current team is capable of that shift is a different question. And based on Molly McPherson's assessment, the answer right now is probably no. Here is the bottom line. Blake Lively's trial starts May 18th. 3 claims are going before a jury. She has said she will testify. Her legal team is prepared. The merits of the case will be argued and a verdict will be reached. But the reputation verdict, the one being written right now in real time, and in comment sections and subreddits and YouTube videos and podcasts, that one is not waiting for May 18th. It has already been in progress for 18 months. And if Molly McPherson is right, the people responsible for shaping that verdict on Blake's behalf are not doing their job. Winning in court matters. But as any public figure who has ever won a lawsuit and still lost their career can tell you, the jury in that courtroom is not the only jury that counts. The public is watching. And right now, based on everything we can see, nobody on Blake Lively's team is watching back. This has been the Marquee Report. Serious, detailed coverage of Hollywood's biggest stories, told the way they deserve to be told. If this gave you a perspective you had not considered before, subscribe and hit the bell. The trial is 6 weeks away, and we will be here for every development. See you on the next one.